Hi, in this JetEngine tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can create a dynamic real estate listings website like this using the Bricks Builder. So in this tutorial, I'm going to be covering how I built this page right here. This is using the listing grid. And then I'm going to show you how you can build out the template so when you click on one of these listings, it's going to show some generic information. And then this is going to be a really cool part too as well, is I'm going to show you how you can have a listing agent for each one, and each one of these agents can have its own page. And inside of their page, you can see what listings they have. So this is going to be using the relations inside of JetEngine. So I'm going to be covering all of this in this tutorial. So now let's just jump into the back end and I'm going to show you how I set everything up, and then you can follow along and build this for your own type of website. So now here I am in the back end, and let me just kind of give you a high level of what we're going to be covering, and then I'm going to break this all down step by step. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is create two different custom post types. So as you can see here on the left, we have an agents and a real estate listings. So let me jump into each one of these and show you what's inside. So inside of here, I just have 4 listings. And so inside of each listing, I have a price, location, amenities, the featured photo, and like the slideshow. And then right down here, this is where you can go ahead and assign the agent. But let's go ahead and jump over into the agents and show you I just have 2 different agents. It's just me and Barbara. So inside of here, same thing, we have some custom meta fields that we're going to be adding. So we have our agent photo, an email, a phone number, simple about, and then this is optional. You can also assign your listings right here. So you have it in 2 different spots. So I'll show you where that is once we set that up. So now you have an understanding of how it's kind of built out and how it should look once it's done. Now let's go ahead and actually start setting everything up. So the first thing is we need to go ahead and set up the 2 custom post types. And inside of here, we're going to have all of those meta fields. So you're going to go ahead and just click add new. And what I'm going to be doing in this tutorial is just kind of showing you how I have everything set up, but I'm going to go through all of the different things so you shouldn't miss anything. Okay, so let's go ahead and give it a name. So in this case, we called it real estate listings, and that's what's going to show up here on the left side. And then this is what your slug is going to be. You can change this to be whatever. So I kept all of these by default. Labels, I didn't change anything inside of labels. Underneath advanced settings, you can go ahead and just follow along, and I pretty much kept everything by default. Right down here, I did change a couple small things. You're going to want to make sure you have has archive. So that's going to give you the ability to click on it and actually have a page that has, content on it. And the menu icon, I changed to a house. So you can see right here, if you want to change it to something else, you can do that. And then down here under supports, I just have title. So that's what's going to keep it nice and clean on the back end. This way, you're not going to have the Gutenberg editor in the way. You're just going to have the meta fields, and you just hit save. That's the easiest way to do it. And then right down here, we have the 5 meta fields. So I'll just kind of quickly go over these. So first one is price. I just went ahead and gave it a label. And I'm just using a generic field type of text. And then you could always go ahead and optionally, turn on and off any of these things, make it required, whatever you may need. But I kind of just followed the rest for the location is the same thing. It's just a text field. Amenities, I went into here, just called it amenities. And then we're going to go ahead for field type. You're going to want to make sure you have checkbox. And I'm going to do a manual input. And then I just added all of like the generic, amenities, so like central air, hardwood floors. So you would go ahead in here and just add in whatever you need. And then let's move on to the next section is going to be using the featured image. So the featured image I wanted to have is right here on these cards. So that's basically the main reason why I have one called featured image. And so I just added a media field type right here. Just called it featured photo. I just chose media, and you're going to want to make sure it says media URL. You don't want ID, you just want the URL. And then I just kept that by default. And then right down here, the last one we have is photos, and the field type is going to be gallery. And same thing, you're going to make sure it says media URL. And then down here, I didn't change anything in the admin columns or filters. So now you go ahead and just hit update post type. Okay, so now we need to create one for agents. So if I go back into my post types, you can see I have one called agents. And I just gave it a generic name, agents. And then same thing down here underneath advanced settings. I pretty much copied exactly the same. And what this case is, I changed the menu icon to like a person. So that's what this image right here is going to be. And I just have it where it supports the title only. And so underneath the meta fields, I just have generic ones we just covered. So media, I have a text one for the email and the phone number. And then the only one that might be a little bit different is this WYSIWYG right here. So the user can, this will be for the about section. If they want to add more than just like a paragraph, they can add other things. That's what you can use right here. And so it's pretty much the same as the other one. So once you are happy with that, you would go ahead and hit update post type. What I recommend next is I jumped over into relations, and you can go ahead and click add new. Let me show you how I have mine built out. And I'm calling this one agent to listing. I want to make sure that the naming is like really simple for me to understand. So when I have to go back into here in the future, I'll understand how things are built out. And then for parent object, it's going to be my agent. So that's going to be the parent. And the child's going to be the real estate listing. So again, you want to make sure that you have your parent and child correct. So parent is going to be the agent. Child is going to be the real estate listing. And they give you 3 different options here. In this case, I wanted to have it where there's only going to be one agent per listing. So you can have it where you can have multiple. That's what one to many would be, or many to many. But in a situation like this, you probably just have one listing agent. So you would just go ahead and click one to one. And then down here, this is what I have enabled. So this is going to give you the ability to turn on and off where you can add your agents to the listing. So you're going to want to make sure your register controls for parent object is on. You don't need at least one child in this case. And same thing down here. I pretty much turned all of these on. This way you have multiple ways that you can enable your agent to your listing. And then right down here, I also wanted to make this a separate database. I don't see why this would be a bad thing. This is good because it might keep it a little bit cleaner. This way you don't throw everything into like one big post meta database. So that's what I do like about this, is you're going to want to have this separate. And then I didn't change anything else underneath labels or any meta fields. And so now you can just hit update right here. And then now you're going to have the ability to tag your agents to your listings. Okay, so now you create your 2 custom post types with your meta fields and you added your relations. That's where you should be right now in this tutorial. Now the next step is you should start to add some agents, and then you can start to add your listings. So I'll just go ahead and click on me right here, and I just gave it a post title. You can go ahead and give it the agent photo, email, phone number. This is your about section, kind of just standard stuff right here. And you can add your listing down here, but I'll show you how to do that on the listing itself. So once you have a few agents first, then what I recommend is go into your real estate listings, go ahead and click and add, add a post. And here's one right here for post 4. Just gave it, the information. Here's the checkbox, your featured photo that's going to show up on that card in your gallery. And then this right here is going to be where you're going to connect your agents. So go ahead and hit connect. And then you would just choose a name right here. I already have Barbara. And if for some reason you made a mistake, you can always go ahead and disconnect it. And that way it will disconnect like across the whole website. So if you ever make a mistake, you can always reconnect it right here. And then just hit update. So each one of your listings should have an agent if you want it to show, correctly on the front end. So what I recommend next is let's go to the JetEngine query builder, and then let's go ahead and start to build out 2 different queries, and then we could start to actually design the front end parts of the website. So the first one we'll be covering is the real estate listings in alphabetical order. So that's going to be what shows up right here. So this is going to be the query for this right here. So it just will show, depending on your post title, from A to Z. So just 1 through 4 in this case. And let me open up that one and show you how I have everything set up. So right here, you can see I have the name real estate listing A to Z. And then underneath here, we want to show the post because each one of these listings is considered like a post. And down here, by default, they usually have cache query. So you can turn that on and off depending on your use case. And this one's really simple. All you need to do is go underneath your post type right here. You're going to want to make sure you choose that correct post type. So real estate listings. And then underneath order by, I have it by title. So you would just click add new sorting parameter. I have it by title, and I'm going from lowest to highest. So if you need to flip it, you would just save that right there. And then if you're kind of new to the query builder, I love this right here. There's this preview results. And you could see this is going to be a great way that you could visually see what your query is going to be pulling up before you start to build out the website. So you can see right here we have the 4 listings. And you can see it's called listing 1 is the very first one. Then when you scroll down here, we have listing 2. So it's in the correct order. So if that shows the way you want it to show, on the front end, that's a good thing. And then you just go ahead and hit update query. And the next one's going to be the agent listing query. So let me jump over into one of these pages. So this is when you go to the listing agent. If you wanted to have a dynamic feed of whatever listings that they're tied to with that relations that we set up, that's going to be a different query. So I'm going to show you how to set that one up right now. And so you would go ahead and just click add new. And in this case, we're calling it the agent listings query. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to be querying post. You can do cache if you want. And then down here, we have two different things we need to set up. First thing is underneath your post type, you're going to want to make sure you choose the real estate listing. You want to show the listings. And if you want to have it, the order by, you can change that right here if you want. But this is going to be the most important part. It's a little confusing, but once you see it, it might make a lot more sense. So what we need to do is underneath post and page, we need to set up related items. So you're going to click that right there. And what we're going to be doing is find the one called related items. So if you scroll down, you should see related items. And then down here, you should have the one that we created for that relations was called agent to listings. So you would go ahead and click that. And then you're going to want to make sure you have this hooked up correctly. So from object, what to show, it should be child. And then down here, we want to make sure it says current object ID. So if you have all of those enabled, so again, you can open up the previews results. And right here, it says preview from page. So let's act as if we're coming from my page. You would type in Mark. And then you can see right here, we have the two queries are coming back. So we have a listing 2 and we have listing 1. So that works out correctly. And then you can just do another test and just see that your other agent, which would be Barb's. So she's got listing 4 and listing 3. So this is working correctly. So as long as you can go up here and type in, preview from page and it's going to populate correctly, then your query is working. So once you get those out of the way, now we can start to actually build out the front end parts of the website. Okay, so now I'm going to jump over into this simple listings page. So of course, this page will have a lot more, in your use case, but I just wanted to show a simple page with just, the listings right here. So if you're kind of new to JetEngine and everything, if you scroll all the way down, let me scroll all the way down here, you could see that they have a whole section for JetEngine. So this is where we're going to be using a lot of these widgets right here or elements. We're going to be using the listing grid to show a grid. Dynamic field, whenever you need to show custom things like this right here, where it says listing agent, that's going to be a dynamic field. And in some cases, you're going to need to use like dynamic image to show things. Now, you can use native bricks elements up here, but there are situations, especially with the dynamic field, that you're going to need to use the JetEngine way. Because if you tie everything with JetEngine, this makes it real easy. This widget right here is very powerful. There's a lot of things you could do with this one. So just keep that in the back of your mind. If you can't figure out how to do something, with JetEngine using the native bricks elements, this right here is going to be your new best friend, is the dynamic field element. So let me go ahead and just show you. This is using the listing grid widget. So since you haven't built out anything, we need to build out a listing first. So if you're kind of new to how it works with JetEngine, that's in a separate interface. So if I go into here, underneath JetEngine, there's listings. So what I recommend is add in your listing item first, and then go back into where I just was with your listing grid, and then you can tag it. So you kind of have to do it in that order first. You would go underneath here, click add new item underneath listings. So you're going to want to make sure when you click add new, we have listing source as post. And then from post type, we're going to be choosing the real estate listings. And then you just give it a name. And in this case, we'll be using bricks. So as you can see, this is how it looks. Source is my post and my real estate listings. So now let's jump into this page and show you how I have this all laid out. So as you can see here on the right side, I have one big section. And inside of here, I just have a simple container. We have the dynamic image. And then this is just another little block right here because I wanted to add some custom padding. And then inside of here, we have the listing name, the price, and then this is going to be a dynamic field to show the listing agent. So kind of standard stuff inside of bricks. I just went ahead and when you go to this page, it's going to be completely blank. So we're going to be going to section, and it's going to automatically add the container. Now, one thing I recommend is when you're building out a listing, in most cases, it probably will start out looking, like full width, depending on how you have your backend all set up with your theme styles. So what I recommend is while you're building this out, just build it out at kind of the scale that you think it's going to be. So you could see in this case, It's going to be, around 250 pixels or so. I kind of figured 4 columns. So you're going to want to make sure you change your width to like 250. And then you can remove that once we're done. But I just wanted to visually be able to kind of style it. So you're going to go ahead and just add that to your main section. And like I said, it's just one big container. And then I just brought in the dynamic image widget right here. And underneath general, you could see we have our real estate listings. We only have one option for your featured photo. So that's what I'm clicking right here. And in most cases, I like to use full. So this way you kind of already have your image optimized and you're not going to have any like degrading when it comes to resolution. But depending on your use case, you might want to use one of these other options. And then right down here, you could just keep your context as the same. That's kind of default. And then you're going to want to make sure that this image is not linked because we're going to be linking this whole card. And underneath style, they have a few options for image. So this is where you can go ahead and change it to be cover, fill, contain, whatever is going to be a good case. Now in this situation, you might want to have it where there's a hard limit to like the height because this way you can change the aspect ratio. That might look okay at that width, it's just going to stretch it. But if you can go to 200, if you wanted to have it a little more control over how high, that's where you're going to change it. And then you can do it at the different breakpoints. Now let's jump over into here. I added a separate little block down here because I wanted to have custom padding around here because when you start to add the border radius, stuff can get cut off. So that's why I wanted to add some padding. And so this first one is going to be very simple. This is using the dynamic field. And you can see I'm just going to be pulling in the post. And then this is just going to be the title. So you could use the dynamic field for this one or a regular like header element inside of bricks will work as well. And I just have it as like an H3. So this next one is going to be using a meta field that we created. So in this case, it's probably easier just to use the dynamic field element. So underneath my source, I chose metadata. And then right down here, you should have a list of all of your different ones. So we have price right here. So that's what I chose. I just chose like H4. And then everything else is pretty standard. Okay, so this next one is going to be one of the more complicated ones, but once you set it up once, you don't have to like worry about it again. This is going to be using dynamic field, and we want to display the agent name. And then I wanted to have it where it said listing agent in front of it. So you could do that a couple different ways. What I like to do is try to keep everything within one element if I can. So this way it's just a little more organized. But in this case, we're going to be using underneath source, we're going to be using post term. And then underneath your object field, if you scroll all the way down right here where it says related items for current object. So you should see this way on the bottom. You got to make sure you have your agents in the relations all set up. So you would choose that one right there, parents from agent to listing. And then underneath here, I'm keeping it as a div. And if for some reason there's not an agent, you can go ahead and add no listing agent found or whatever. That way it will show something. So the next part is if you want to have something in front or behind the name, you can go underneath customize field output. And by default, it's just going to render out the name. So that's what this little macro is right here. But what's really cool is if I go ahead and just paste in standard HTML, you can see right here, I wanted to have it bold and say listing agent, and then you could just have it right here. Now, the way it works is when you use a div or any of these other ones, it's probably going to stack it and look like this. So you might need to actually go into your code and add a little bit of CSS, but I was able to easily do that. So if you go into that element, go underneath style, and you can see right here, I'm just targeting this element right here. And then inside of JetEngine, they have this class right here for JetEngine dynamic field. And you can just put div and display inline. So this is just optional. You might not need this, or you can lay it out differently. You can have like a 2-column layout. So you don't have to do it with CSS, but I just wanted to give you an option right here. I do like to keep everything within one little element, like I said. And so that's kind of just like the basic card that you can create. Now, if you want to actually make it where it has these rounded corners, there's a couple cool ways you can do it. And so underneath your section right here, let's go underneath the style, and we'll go underneath border. And I went ahead and just added one little pixel border with some color. That way you could see right here, there's something to it. Let me actually go to the front end. That little border is just going to show right here. So that's what that is. And then for the border radius, we're going to be doing 10 pixels, and you can change it right here, whatever you want it to be. And then box shadow, I added just simple values for a box shadow. You can see right here, I just did 4 or 5. That way there's a little bit of a shadow right here. This is all optional. So one thing I did notice was if you don't have overflow hidden, you might have some issues with like the image overhanging, but let me show you what that means before I go any further. So right here I have on that whole section overflow hidden. So by default, you're gonna see if I hit save right here and hit refresh, the image isn't gonna like cut off correctly. And that's because you need to have overflow hidden. So anything that's overflowing this section, it will cut it off. And so that's what this overflow hidden is going to mean. So if I go to overflow hidden on this whole section, if you're using rounded corners, it's going to fix that. So you can see right here, I no longer have that issue. And so if you did happen to have text down here, it would probably do the same thing. It would be cut off if you had no padding. So that's why I wanted to add some custom padding. And then the last thing is, let's just go ahead and link this up. So in order to make the whole card clickable, what we need to do is go back on the section. Underneath your link, we're going to choose dynamic data. And then you could just go over here and it's just going to be the post link. So you can just go ahead and it should change it to post URL, hit save. And so now you can see when you hover over each one of these, it's going to be clickable. Okay, so now you have your listing. Now you can finally go into your listing grid and actually add it in there. So let's jump over into that page. So any page that you want to have your listing grid, I just pulled in the JetEngine listing grid. And underneath your listing, you should now see the one that we just created, main listing template. And if you happen to have this page open, you can always just hit reload canvas or reload the whole browser and it should show up. And in this case, I'm just going to be doing a 4-column layout. And then right down here, you could choose how many posts you want, that type of stuff. But underneath your custom query, this is where you're going to want to go ahead and make sure you choose the one that we created earlier in the tutorial. The alphabetical one, so the real estate listing A to Z. So that way it's going to be listing all of them from 1 to 4. And then of course for your different breakpoints, you could go ahead and change it to be, 2 columns on tablet, whatever it may be. So that's where you would go ahead and just change that. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is show you how you can build out this page right here. So this is going to be the page when you click on each listing that it actually will display the content that you have on your listing, itself. So in order to do that, we need to go into bricks and templates. And you can see right here, I have 2 of them. I have the real estate listing single template, which is what I just showed you. And then we're going to need to build one for agents. But you would go ahead and just click add new template. So now once you're on that page, you can go ahead and give it a name. And underneath right here, where it says template type, you're going to want to make sure you hit single. And then usually what I do is I'll hit update and then edit with bricks. And then anytime I build out a template like this, I always go immediately up into here where it says manage, and underneath your template settings, you're going to need to change your conditions. Your post type, we're going to be using the real estate listing. So just go ahead underneath your post type and choose the real estate listing. And then this is also pretty helpful if you want to target a specific post. So in this case, I wanted to see how it looked with listing 1. You can go underneath single post and then just choose your listing. So this one's optional, but you can see right here, this page, pretty simple. I'm just keeping it 2 different sections right here. We have the main section, and I'm just pulling in the post title widget. Now, when you are in a template, you can pull in some of these and you don't have to worry about changing anything up. So that's what I did right here. So if it's just a simple post template, you could pull in this element right here and it will show up. And this next section, I just have it split up into 2 different columns. So you can see I have one main container, and then I have a left column right here, and then the right column right here. So let's go ahead and show you how I built this one out. In order to do this little slideshow, what I'm going to be using is the default carousel inside of bricks. So you would go ahead and just click that, and it should be right over here. So you click that one in here. And then underneath your type, you're going to choose media. And then underneath your images, you're going to want to make sure you click this button right here. And what's really easy is, since it's all built with JetEngine, if you scroll down, you just need to click right here where it says photos. So that's going to pull in this little macro right here, so it knows what photos to pull in. And then everything else inside of here is pretty standard stuff. I won't go over every single setting, but you could change the height. So that's what this is right here, 500 pixels. You can add some spacing if you're going to have more than one. So if you wanted to have two on here, you could do that. So it's pretty cool. They give you a lot of good options inside the bricks carousel. And I have autoplay on. And yeah, just kind of standard stuff. I did link it where the user can click on each one. It will link to a light box, so it should pull up. And then you can have arrows if you want. So pretty standard. I didn't change anything else in the back end right here. And then down here, we just have a heading, and the dynamic field is going to be for these amenities. So I brought in the dynamic field element, and let me show you what I have set up. So I have the metadata, and then I just went down here into the real estate listings and this one called amenities. And then I'm displaying it as a div right here, filter output. You're going to want to make sure that you have checked values list. I liked it where it was two different columns right here, and you can add a divider. So that's what those little lines are. You can change the colors. Context is regular default. Now let's jump over into the right column, and I have a dynamic field, kind of how we set up before. I just have the dynamic field, the metadata, and I just chose price right here. It didn't change out anything else right here. This is a regular title, so meta description is the location. So I just chose location right here. And then the next thing is I wanted to make it where this whole block is going to be clickable, and it's going to display the listing agent and then, my face and everything. So when you do click on one of these, this whole thing is going to be clickable to that agent. So let me show you how that's built out. It's best to just keep that in one big block right here, and then we have a heading. This is just a static heading. The dynamic image, I'm just going to be pulling in the dynamic image from JetEngine. You would go underneath here, and it's nice. You just choose agent photo. And down here, you're going to want to make sure underneath context, it's related items from agent to listing. So it might be on the very, very bottom. So you might have to scroll your screen down, but you're going to want to make sure that it says related items from agent. So that's going to be pulling in the relation that we created. And then underneath your style image, this is where you can go ahead and give it a border. So pretty cool little trick is if you want it to be rounded, you could do 50% border radius and it will make it round. So if you want it square, you wouldn't turn that on. But this is where you can go ahead and change your different settings for your image. And then the dynamic field I put right next to it. And in order to do that, I just chose post and then title right here, div. And then this is the same thing. You're going to make sure the context is set to the very last one, related items from agent to listing. And if you're curious on how I was able to get those two things next to each other, I just did 60% on my name for the width, and then I did 40% on the image. So 40, 60 equals 100. And then for this whole block, I just went ahead and made sure that it was wrapped and then horizontal and just kind of standard, like centered. So in order to link this up, it's kind of similar to what we did before. We need to select that block, click link. We're going to be using dynamic data. And in this case, if I scroll all the way down the page, we're going to choose this one right here, the GE relation agent to listings. So once you do that, it should show up that it's going to render out as me. So go ahead and hit save. And that's what this is right here. So now you can go ahead and click that, and it's going to go to the right listing agent for that listing. All right, so the last part of the tutorial is how you can build out each one of these listing agent pages and then have this dynamic listing grid down here. So just like we created the real estate listing single template, you're going to want to create one called agent listing template. So once you're inside of there, you're going to want to make sure, just like the other one, underneath your template type, click single. Hit update, and then we're going to go into edit with bricks. And then I'm going to do the same situation is go into manage underneath your template settings, conditions, post type, and then this time it's going to be agents. And then underneath here, I'm going to just choose Barbara as the populated content. So it's basically the same thing we did before where we have a simple area where we just have a section up here. And then we just have some, information pulling in from that post type. So the first area is just going to be just like the very first one is the post title widget. So I just went under here under single post title, just drop that in here, and it should automatically pull in that post title. And then right down here, I just have it as two different columns. So just like we created before with my other listing agent photo, we're going to bring in a dynamic image. general. And then underneath that post type, we have this one right here called agent photo. So you want to go ahead and choose that. Make sure everything is linked off in most cases. And underneath style, this is where I went ahead and gave it a border of 50%. So it's got that rounded look right here. So on the right side, we have the 3 different fields right here. Very simple. I just brought in a dynamic field. The metadata, I just went ahead and chose agent email. And it's the same thing. I just went here, it's agent phone number, and then this one's just going to be the agent about. And then I kept everything else by default and didn't have to change anything else down here. So as you can see down here, I brought in a listing grid. So as you can see underneath my listing, in most cases, you could just keep the same listing item that we created before. So as you can see, it was the simple one where you have the image, the listing, and then the title right here. You can go ahead and just pull that one in here. And if you don't want it to show like listing agent, you might want to create like another listing item, but it would be the same thing. You would just go ahead and choose your listing item right here. And we're going to do 2 or 3 columns, whatever is going to fit your design. And then underneath the custom query is going to be that agent's listing query. So let's jump back into that if you need a refresher on here. So we went into here, query builder, we have this agent listing query. So this is the one that was kind of complicated where underneath the post, we had to make sure it was the related items. And then the relation was agent to listings, child for the object, and then the current object. So this was probably the most complicated part about this is figuring out how to get this part to sync up correctly. But it should be just like this, related items, and then you choose your child and everything right here. So that's what's pulling in right here is when you're on this page, it knows that it's on this agent and to show the listings that that agent is, has that relation to. And then that's really about it. Once you do that, you hit save. You can always just go underneath your agents. And then every time you view one of your agents, you should see it right here. So she's got listing 4 and 3. And if I go underneath mine, I should have listing 1 and 2. So listing 2, listing 1. So that's how you can build out this whole entire dynamic real estate listings. So just to recap, you have a listing grid right here. You can have it where you can click on each one. And inside of here, you'll be able to, dynamically go through all of your gallery photos. And then having your agent, synced up correctly, that's the most complicated part about all of this. But once you understand that each agent needs to be tied to a listing, and then you're just using the relations functionality inside of JetEngine to kind of sync it all up. And that's it for this tutorial on how you can build out a dynamic real estate listings using the Bricks Builder and JetEngine. Thank you for watching.